And to be frank, Blizzard was hiding something. The Overwatch 2 engine could not run 6v6 well on platforms like the Switch. The false claims about 6v6 were people claiming that the game would be magically fixed if they went back to 6v6. A lot of the problems would get instantly mitigated, yes, but it would not instantly fix the game. Yeah, I mean, look, we waited, we saw, and if the 6v6 tests, they can't really achieve it, then we can have another conversation about 5v5. That's fine.
Is preparing for the much anticipated 6 vs 6 test. But this might be a battle that Blizzard cannot win. Let's have a look. This is going to be a bit of a shorter video. It is something that has been on my mind for the
Yo, let me just say this. Brother, I respect the beard. Oh my goodness. Hey, just a round of applause. Listen, man, I always wonder what I would look like with a beard like that. I probably could grow one out. Like, my beard could get really long. We're going to find out in No Shave November here in a couple days. But man, I respect the winter beard, dude. Hell yeah.
last few days. Since they announced the 6 vs 6 tests that are coming in Season 14, the pressure has been rising within the Overwatch community.
I haven't seen this
Comments
guy before.
on all types of content have been heating up, and there's this sense of both frustration and excitement hanging in the air. In case you missed it, earlier this week, Aaron Keller, the game director for Overwatch, announced in his director's take that they will be running a series of 6 vs 6 tests in Season 14. I made a whole video on the topic. I'll link it below. But yeah, those tests could end up pushing Overwatch back to a 6 vs 6 format. Or they could not. And how? According to Aaron Keller, we might end up in a game that has both 5 vs 5 and 6 vs 6. But whatever.
And we could, by the way. Like, I think the biggest mistake they could make is limiting themselves to only one option. Like, I'm okay with some seasons being 5v5 to shake it up, and I'm okay with some seasons being 6v6. What I wasn't okay with was people spreading false information, things that weren't accurate, or citing inaccurate facts about why they preferred either format. That was what the issue I took. People just acted like 5v5 didn't have problems or it solved things or whatever it may be when it wasn't the case. And I also did, to my credit, call out 6v6ers on a lot of things that they got wrong too. Granted, I was more like against 5v5 because there were more false claims about 5v5 going around than false claims coming in about 6v6. The false claims about 6v6 were people claiming that the game would be magically fixed if they went back to 6v6. A lot of the problems would get instantly mitigated, yes, but it would not instantly fix the game.
For the outcome, I'm going to predict that it's going to change little to nothing. And that's relatively speaking. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that because I'm in favor of one of those two formats. Like I've said many times before, at this point, I don't even care anymore. I'm kind of done talking about it. I'm sick of listening to all of it. I want to move on. In my opinion, both formats have advantages, but they also have their issues. And I've heard and read a lot of arguments of either side, and none of them have convinced me that there's a sure way forward. And I know I'm not the only one with that opinion, but most of us choose to remain quiet, silent, in the dark, and mainly because both sides of this discussion tend to get really angry. Woo. But no, seriously, this discussion has become way too polarizing with the help of some people. It is too emotional. It carries all the burden of 9 years of Overwatch.
I will say, I think it's calmed down a lot. The only reason it got heated was because of how Blizzard didn't respond and how it looked from people who were, and to be honest, like, let's just say it for what it is here. Blizzard intentionally didn't respond. And because they had certain creators very close to them defending 5v5, it looked like they were covering for Blizzard. And to be frank, Blizzard was hiding something. The Overwatch 2 engine could not run 6v6 well on platforms like the Switch, unlike the previous engine. The quote, upgrades they made have performance issues on a lot of the other consoles. So that's why it got so heated. Was because there wasn't any acknowledgement of what was going on. And it looked, frankly, like a cover-up. And then when it comes out that the engine wasn't there, you know, it makes sense. But now that they've said that they're willing to try it, the narrative around it all was what was so frustrating. It was, when we went into 5v5, what was said was that it wasn't final and they were willing to walk it back. They tried a bunch of things. They didn't work. Goalposts got moved, and then all of a sudden, you know, it puts guys like, you know, frankly, Frito and Jake in a bad spot who are just arguing their opinions. Granted, I think a lot of them were wrong, to be fair, but that's why that escalated the way it did. That's why it escalated the way it did. And ever since Blizzard actually made a statement, it's been pretty calm. And I think that's all people really wanted was it to be acknowledged and tried, rather than just saying, yeah, that's never going to happen again. I think that's what was so irritating about it. It was like there was almost like an arrogance to it. But now we know why. The engine couldn't handle it. You know, it is what it is there.
Every match that anybody has ever lost, every tank that got yelled at, every failed balancing attempt that they did, but also on the other hand, every amazing experience that you ever had in the game. All of these different experiences add to the players' opinions on both ends of this discussion. And that's exactly why I think Blizzard cannot win this battle. I wouldn't call it a battle, but you know, it's starting to look like it. It has become too loaded, too personal. Some players, not all, that prefer 6 versus 6 are putting way too much stock in this possible shift. They think that a shift back to 6 versus 6 is going to save the game, that they go back to having fun in every single match, that all the former players are going to flock back, and that everyone will be able to recapture that feeling they had the first time they played Overwatch back in 2016.
Yeah, that's not what people are asking for, though. That's not what it is. And going back to 6v6 with the proper tank adjustments actually does do that. Like but people are gonna realize, and this is what's so funny about this whole debate, and I do obviously no flame to him here. I find so funny about that comment. It will immediately feel better not going up against a 900 HP Orisa or a Hog or a super tank. When every hero in the game is significantly more relative to each other and support healing isn't as strong with better abilities, the game and every duel you take actually is gonna feel a lot better because the time to kill is that much better. And you're going to notice it immediately. Things die way faster in 6v6. Way faster. That's why 5v5 has become so autopilot-y, right? So, like 6v6, it's just a more intense game. It really is. So, I think it's really funny that people don't realize that when you make that switch, I promise you right now, you are going to immediately notice how much more killable front lines are. And how much more dynamic the exchange is. You're going to immediately notice, if they remove role passives from the game, that as a DPS, you can actually build your ult really well when you perform. A lot of these things, people have forgotten because they haven't played it in a long time, that were actually very, very good about 6v6. 5v5 promised more player agency. That was the big shtick with 5v5.
I think it's incredibly disingenuous to dismiss the frustration with 6v6 format being removed, but use that exact reason to not swap off 5v5.
Yeah, I agree. I do think there's a little bit of a double standard there, but that's okay. So, you know, I don't think people realize that. And I'm excited to see it happen because I know it will. The matchups are going to feel better. Every single one of them on each role. When you're playing Ana, sleeping a tank that misplays, you can actually get that kill and you can survive. Playing DPS, when an off tank comes to duel you, you got a chance to kill that tank now. You have no chance to do it when they're on top of you right now. Roll passive's gone. Hopefully HP buff's gone. Like, the game actually will feel really good when every character is much more relative to each other. Now, to be fair, that's not necessarily a format thing. They didn't have to super buff the tanks in 5v5. They didn't have to giga buff supports in the format, but they did because of the format. So when that gets walked back, you're going to notice it pretty instantly. So that's what I'm calling. Like, people are underestimating what a proper rebalance and an undo button is going to do and feel like in almost every matchup in the game.
Yeah. I'm going to be very careful with what I say next, if that should not happen. And I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but I'm sure as hell not betting any money on it. Those players are going to turn to Blizzard and accuse them of messing up the return to 6 versus 6. They didn't implement it correctly. They should have done 2-2-2. They messed up the balancing. Those types of comments. For some players, it just has become too big of a thing. It almost became political. There's a certain lack of reason in all of this. And to be honest, it sometimes gets a little scary. But you know, it seems that is the world we live in today. And if you don't believe me, I'm already seeing those types of comments on some of my content today. Some players already seem to be preparing their pushback and wondering why they are messing with Rokyo. Why are they just not bringing us back to 6 versus 6 with a 2-2-2 format? Well, without going into all of that too deeply.
To be fair, they probably should have done that first, but I'm okay with them trying stuff because we're going to try both either way.
One possible reason is that they want to limit the impact that this is going to have on all of our queue types. I don't know if you guys remember that, but those queue types back at the end of Overwatch 1 could be problematic. That's why they started giving us all types of rewards to switch roles. And they've said multiple times that they're really worried about that. And I'm pretty sure there's a few other reasons why they're kind of trying to...
That is the biggest problem with 6v6 role queue is queue times. It's not gameplay. 5v5's biggest problems are gameplay related. 6v6's are queue times.
Steers away from Rokyo. They sure as hell are not doing it to annoy us. If you think about it, we played 6 versus 6 for 6 years. Oh wait, that's a lot of 6s. They know what the problems are with this format. So we are doing these tests to figure out how they can solve these issues.
I don't think it's fair to say they know what the issues of 6v6 were yet. They never fixed it properly. They literally here's the cold hard truth about 6v6, and you could see it in their announcement about 5v5 from Aaron Keller. A lot of the problems they talked about in 6v6, they were totally wrong about. Like in the 5v5 announcement, like Aaron came out and said, and this was years ago, I'm not trying to see, but look what Aaron said, you know what I mean? He came out years ago and said double main tank was oppressive. Double main tank wasn't the problem. It was literally just Orisa and Sigma, who were everything tanks, and Bap and Brig. So, like, they clearly didn't know what the problem was in 6v6, or else they would have done a good job addressing it. Now, this new team might be different, to be fair, 100%, 100%. But I don't think it, like, I can't, it's not fair to say right now, in my opinion, that they knew the problems of 6v6, because if they knew the problems of 6v6, they would have fixed it. And they never came close to getting it right.
On top of that, they're trying to identify some new and more unknown issues that come with the new heroes, the new maps, the new modes. And lastly, they're trying to find out how much of an interest there really is in returning to 6 versus 6. Because some players seem to even wonder why they're doing these tests. Just flip the switch. Get us back. I've seen people claiming that literally every single player that plays Overwatch wants to go back to 6 versus 6. Yeah, no. Not really.
True.
There is a 5 versus 5 community out there, and they might not be as vocal, but as we get closer to those tests, they're starting to speak up, and they are really worried that their experience, that they love, that they enjoy, since they might not have played Overwatch 1, or they just prefer this way of playing, is going to get ruined. In other words, if we end up getting 6 versus 6, those people are going to be annoyed. I swear, if we get an angry 5 versus 5 mob at that point, I'm going to flip my desk, and it is a heavy desk, trust me. And then there's a substantial group of people that are either unaware or they just don't care.
Yeah.
Like myself. We might just get a little annoyed because of all this back and forth, the excessive whining, the expensive cosmetics. But yeah, that's a different topic. No matter what the outcome, no matter what they decide to do, one thing is certain. Blizzard is going to get yelled at. It's a given. Even if they end up adding both formats to the game to please as many people as possible, there will be complaints. They will get yelled at. The queue times are going to be crazy. The menu looks really cluttered. They should focus on balancing just one game mode instead of two. You know, those types of comments. In the 8 years that I've been covering Overwatch for the Omnic Post, I've seen it happen every single time they make a big decision like this.
Yeah.
Overwatch
I mean, that's just gaming in general, though. That's way beyond 5v5 or 6v6. Everybody has an opinion. You know? Everybody has an opinion. That's just the nature of gaming. That's not a 5v5 or 6v6 thing. That's just the nature of gaming.
Community just does not like change. So yeah, Blizzard is going to yell that. That is going to happen. And Blizzard knows that. I'm pretty sure that at this point, they're not even trying to find a solution for everybody. They're trying to find a solution that pleases as many people as possible. And the others,
and that could work.
I guess this might help some people to finally say
I just want the game to be better. That's it. My big thing is they laid out distinct design goals for 5v5 and didn't achieve any of them. And you can go, listen, you can go look, like Flats was way harder on the devs about 5v5's first change than I was. The VODs are there. The scripts are there. I said we need to wait and see. We waited. We saw. They didn't achieve the design goals. It did the opposite. And then they changed the goalpost, and it's like, it's just not better. Now we have super tanks in the game, and it's just like going up against a super tank. It's just not fun. It's just not fun. It's just not fun for the core roles. So it's impossible for them to balance. There's no way they can do it. It's impossible. So yeah, I mean, look, we waited, we saw, and if the 6v6 tests they can't really achieve it, then we can have another conversation about 5v5. That's fine. But yeah, no, it's just I just it is what it is. I think many people will agree with that.
Goodbyes, and there's definitely going to be older players that are going to return. But at that point, we all as a group will find new stuff to complain about. So, while I personally look forward to taking part in all of these tests, I kind of dread about the whole phase that will be coming after that. The good thing is that once we are beyond that point, the team can then focus on what is next for Overwatch 2, what is going to carry this game for the next 3 years. And I'm working on a video on that topic that is going to be released next week, next Sunday, so make sure to subscribe. For now, however, that was it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It always helps me out. I also want to...
Yeah, that was a good video. I mean, look, pretty on the money. I think the one thing that I think is going to surprise him is when you go back to 6v6, you actually are going to notice a massive difference immediately. DPS players are going to be able to build your ults faster. You're going to be able to kill tanks. You're going to have way less damage per limb. Right now, there are tons of games where you will have 3,000-4,000 damage and 3 or 4 limbs. You're also going to have bigger moments. You don't get big multi-kills anymore. Triple kill, quadruple kill. You never hear that anymore because fights are so spread out all over the place. It's almost impossible to get big combos anymore. And the off tank was the big setup role that would set things up in that situation. So you'll get bigger moments. I think I had my first quintuple kill in months today. Today, right? So there are some things that are going to surprise people. You're going to get better feedback from your duels, in my opinion. And there's definitely going to be a lot more combos. Fights are going to be way more turnable. Going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited for 6v6. I think everybody should give it a fair chance. And I think, like, again, the angry political statements, they weren't really coming from the 6v6 side. That's not really what was happening. What the 6v6ers were calling out were how it seemed like, and to be frank, like it probably was, and actually, you know what? I'm going to say it. It outright was, like, people trying to cover for Blizzard. That's what it was. Bro You Whack came out and said that they were told the reason why they couldn't go back to 6v6 at the Creator Summit. Creators knew. Creators knew. And you know what? I'm going to call out Flats and Boger. I love those guys to death. They put out a TikTok months before that announcement came out talking about how imagine Overwatch on the Switch in 6v6 right now. Overwatch 2, like all the new stuff they've done. It would like lag clients. The creators knew, and they didn't talk about it. And to be fair, it wasn't on creators to come out and make that statement. It needed to be Blizzard. But there is a paper trail, whether people want to admit it or not, of creators clearly knowing that that was the reason why Blizzard told them that they couldn't go back to 6v6 and that the engine wasn't ready. And so the people who were asking for 6v6 had all these names thrown at them, all of these things said, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it didn't go too far the other way too. I wish I could walk back some of the things that I said because I saw other people joking about it. I kind of just hopped on that bandwagon without thinking about it, and like in hindsight, I wish it hadn't had to get to that point. But to be honest as well, there were so many lies going around about Overwatch 2 and everything that was going on that's why that happened. And there absolutely was a push from creators to try to get people's off Blizzard's back, demanding answers that we rightfully should have had for a sequel that we didn't ask for, that didn't deliver on anything, which is okay. Water under the bridge. We're moving on. But, you know, that's why that happened. It really is. It really, really is. And obviously no hate to my colleagues at all. I love all those guys. But you can't blame the players for being irritated at that. You can't. And I get it. And look at the shit that was said about me. Not that I care. I think it's funny, honestly. Because it's just not about being credible. It's about, you know, all the other stuff. But, you know, I'm glad all that's done. I kind of agree with him. I think it never would have escalated to that degree if Blizzard had stepped in and said something sooner. But I think they wanted to see how far it would go and if they even had to make a statement. Because the ideal situation for them clearly is that they don't make a statement about the engine that can't do it. Boger is a shill? Not really. He just doesn't care. There's a difference between shilling and not caring. Here's what I would say. How many of the tank streamers still stream tank to this day, every day? And how many of those people could log on Overwatch 1, even in double shield meta, and stream playing tank every single day? I would say the results are in my opinion. But yeah, good video. I think he nailed it. I think he's going to be surprised though as to how cordial people will be about it now that it's just being addressed at face value. I think that's what people wanted. Yeah.